Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to SCM Pro Forum's CPG Roundtable, focusing on role of technology in business post-COVID-19. I would like to thank SAP for their support to the roundtable. I would like to also thank all our speakers for sparing time and coming down for the discussion. We welcome you all and thank you. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our distinguished leaders today. And I would request our speakers to kindly switch on their camera and audio and come up on stage once I call them. Let me have on stage Saurabh, Director Supply Chain India and South Asia at Kellogg's company, Vijay Wadhwani, Head SCM Logistics at Relaxo Footwear, Ashok Kumar, Leading Supply Chain Planning and Logistics at Britannia Industries, Jagadeesh Kunchey, Vice President Supply Chain and Logistics and MC member at ITC Limited, Murali Jagannathan, General Manager Supply Chain Logistics and Merchandising Watches and Accessories at Titan Company Limited, Girikanth Avadhanula, Director Supply Chain Solutions at SAP, Dr. Rakesh Singh, Chairman Institute of Supply Chain Management. We welcome you all and thank you for being here. I would request Dr. Singh to kindly lead the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome, dear esteemed panelists. This is a very oft-repeated lament on pandemic, but I think I need to repeat it to put the context in proper perspective. We have seen an unprecedented supply shock due to pandemic on the one side, and we have a complete stoppage of demand on the other side. And the life aspect of this pandemic has had a very disturbing impact on labor force, as you have seen labor force migrating back to the villages, and those scenes of labor walking 1,800 kilometers to 2,000 kilometers. And at the outset, the kind of shortages that has created has affected the lifeline of this particular pandemic supply chain, primarily because supply chain still operated well, delivered. Hence, it affected the whole, each and every element of the supply chain, be it factory, be it transportation, be it logistics, be it delivery. And if you look at the data that is available, and if you start putting the whole things in context, and see that if you look at the global study done by McKinsey of around 27 countries, we find that the major disruption was in the domain of material supplies, where material shortages were around 45%. Then it was drop in demand. Then it was worker shortages, cash flows issues, and the last was planning. But as you know, that last was planning only to the extent of the 10 or 12%. The planning became the most critical activity and the most affected activities in the supply chain, as we started putting all these elements together in order to react to a very curved market and market structure. So, with discussion with SAP, we thought that we need to identify those curves, not the flat supply chain, but the curved supply chain. That's what I mean. And how these gaps in the supply chain can be actually looked from a perspective of availability of the technology, because there are a lot of other studies from various consulting firms, even from academia, which states that more technology savvy that you have been, more digital acceleration that you have done before the COVID, you have been more secure. How true is this? And how are we going to actually secure our supply chain in the future, both in the physical terms, the digital twins, I call it as physical terms, where you secure a physical supply chain with a strong backbone of technology. And hence, if you've seen the note that I've sent to you is a very simple note, Saurabh. There was a note that was sent last night very late, but it did indicate the area of direction that we will take. And I would suggest that we'll stick to that note in a very simplistic manner, because that talks about that talks about the dimensions of supply chain beautifully. And as the note has really defined planning, buy, make, and deliver, we will start with understanding the gaps in the area of planning, then in terms of supply, then in terms of production, and then in terms of sale or delivery. And in terms of delivery, the larger integration that's needed to deliver well, but also make, plan, buy, make, deliver a very fundamentally unified system of any organization. And I think that's where it has been happening, because if you see the same report by McKinsey, it says that what has been the learning under the COVID-19, 4 or 5 things that have come about well in terms of larger supply chain learnings is that end-to-end supply and distribution cockpit, daily war room meeting, qualification of additional resources if ever possible, and qualification of additional distribution logistics options or warehousing options. Meaning that companies to a very large extent were able to manage this. But as they managed this, they also saw a very strong change in the consumer behavior. A lot of people have looked at consumer behaviors very differently. I thought there are 4 or 5 major changes that have happened. One is category consumption, channel selections, shopper trip frequency, brand preferences, media consumption, and all of these have been also dynamically changing as we lockdown, unlockdown, and as we open up, and maybe as few countries in the world are saying the second wave of the virus, behaviors may change. That has led to a lot of change in the way we do business and the way we have done business. How is planning going to be very different? So let us start with the very first statement, that what these changes in terms of disruptions as well as changes in the consumer behavior, and also traditionally what has been the major problem in terms of demand planning. So I'll start with Ashok Kumar and his input, and we will have a multiple input on the same thing as we are looking at understanding these areas in a better ways. Yes, Ashok.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Singh. So basically, I think first a quick check. Am I audible and all okay? Am I audible? All okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So starting with the demand planning aspect of when the pandemic hit us, nobody knew how things were going, but I think like you said, a war room and a daily review of things was fundamentally one of the key things which enabled us to swiftly get back on track to the level possible. Now, specifically on the demand planning part of it, the question was really, so this is a new setup which is coming in, right? So we don't know what's the demand trends going to be, the entire, so we have a set way of doing demand planning, and that's basically looking at statistical forecast, looking at history and doing things. We realize that that's not going to work, right? It's not going to work because there's no history for this, and we don't know the customer behavior is going to be, how it's going to be, etc. And so as a business, we took some collective calls in terms of looking at Pareto of products and looking at how do we navigate and how do we look at daily trends of what's going on. Okay, that's where the technology also comes in terms of, so we were very quickly got back on track in terms of looking at what's actually happening on the ground. So a combination of the channels shifted. Okay, we have a wholesale channel, the retail channel, and then there is a whole host of modern trade and various other channels, right? So the behaviors of those channels changed. To cut a long story short, we looked at Pareto. We looked at how the channels are behaving, because channel play also has got a pack play in it, right? Because of products and consumer behaviors, etc., etc., changes basis what what kind of outlets you are servicing and all that. So that's the first thing which happened in terms of taking the whole demand planning to a different level, which was not there earlier. One, we've heard about what do you call it, demand planning from checkout register of a modern trade retail chain, right to the supplier. Things like that happened really, and so we also had disruptions in production. As a result, inventories dropped, but we still should focus were completely on the 80-20 principle and the key product lines. So as a result, what happened is we could turn around products better, etc., etc. Okay. So the demand planning, which was earlier a straightforward, straightjacketed method, shifted, and what's happened now post-pandemic, or in this current phase of pandemic, we have picked up learnings, and what we're doing is a mix of both. That's what we're doing, because we have made sure that the learning which we have got during this phase, the initial phase, which was a direct lockdown one, was bad, right? And that has been picked up, and with some learnings of the past, and that's what we're doing today. That's on the demand planning piece. I just want to know whether I should carry on talking about all the aspects, or should I stop here and then let the other panelists talk, and then I come back.
No, for some short while I lost the connection, but I'm back, and I did get a gist of what you said, Ashok. But we'll go back, we'll go with this question on demand planning with even Jagadeesh first, okay, and then Saurabh.
Fair enough. Got it. Yeah.
You have to unmute yourself, Jagadeesh.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. COVID has taught some of the things that could take a good things there to us there, along with all that bad kind of feeling there that could take it has got good some of the good things. So which has made a lot of things that which otherwise we could not have thought. Like there that coming to the demand planning, there we always used to focus there upon a monthly S&OP cycles, and then that getting the demand there that we never looked at, though the data was there available there. Looking at the data there at a daily level was one of the things that which always companies ignored. For us, that it was an eye opener there in terms of that during the initial phase of COVID. What happened was that so the complete demand patterns have gone haywire. For us there that as a company there which is operating there in multiple categories and then multiple products. Some products have seen unforeseen kind of a demand. There is a huge surge there in demand, which is a 3x, 4x kind of a number. And then there are some categories that where there is a complete slump there in terms of demand. So now how do you manage this? The only way that what we could derive benefit out was there that picking up the data trends there from whatever, since we are there on a continuous replenishment, at least to a certain extent, to 70 to 80% of the extent that the data was available there, that what is selling there at the marketplace. From that you could predict some of the trends. But however, again, that people reaching out there to the distributor points itself was a difficult kind of an option there during the initial part of the lockdown. So whatever the data was available, what we were able to do is that one is that use that data there to estimate there that what is selling and what is not selling. That is one. Second thing is that focus there on the categories there that could take away where there is a surge there in demand. Please give extra focus there on those categories. Number 3 is there that there is a channel, in terms of channel split, it has also that completely changed. So earlier e-commerce used to be a 1%, 2% kind of a share there in terms of our volumes. But during this period, it has doubled. So now e-commerce, if you are catering there to e-commerce or a modern trade, then it brings its own complexity there in terms of whether it is high variability or that could take a demand there for a certain specific type of niche SKUs, and these things there need to be handled there in a different way than the normal type of thing. So this needed there that working more closely there with all the teams there across the supply chain, whether it is a daily scheduling there in case of some products, and in case of that the monthly S&OPs got slashed there onto weekly S&OPs there for most of the categories, and then in some of the categories it was like a twice a week S&OP. So those were the changes there in terms of demand planning what we were able to do. And the line scheduling, people who are doing line scheduling were literally there on their toes. So they used to keep on changing these things. Their priorities used to keep on changing their day by day. So these are some of the things. But the good part is there that the teams were able to quickly implement these changes. So we're able to there leverage there on the data, and then thereby able to act upon there, so that we were able to service there to the market. So that's what about the demand planning piece.
Let me take this to Saurabh. And Saurabh, you have been, quite vocal at our webinars on these issues. I'll take it a step ahead. You've heard Ashok and Jagadeesh, and I think these are common echoes from larger FMCGs or CPG companies that we have been seeing. What do you think are the major challenges for demand planning, not just post-pandemic, but also if you take the transition pre-pandemic to the pandemic to the post-pandemic, and when we move into the new normal, what are the major challenges, major areas of concerns that we have?
So clearly, Dr. Rakesh, Ashok and Jagdish have covered it very well. We've heard this many times. This is how most of the companies, responded by simplifying their offerings by focusing on fewer things, right? So that's what the current resources at that time allowed. So for me, the future is not too different than what it was in the pre-pandemic either. The core supply chain processes or the principles have not changed. Right. What has changed and what we are going to look for now is have your SNOP, how disciplined is it? Right? How disciplined it is, how wide it is, and what depth do you do? It's not about necessarily about how frequently do you do your demand plan. As we saw during the pandemic also, it doesn't make sense to plan daily if you cannot change your execution. So if you're running with a fixed production plan, which runs, you have a 1 week, 2 weeks fixed production plans. If you're not going to change those plans, it doesn't make sense to change your demand planning cycle and say that I'm going to plan at a higher frequency. So that's one of the core things. Second is if your process has got depth and it has got width. By width I mean, are you doing a channel level forecasting? Are you doing encompassing all the regions within that? Are you taking care of whatever new customers you may be having, right? Then you have a strong process. What is needed are 3 or 4 things that I noted down for the future. Is one, you need to have much more greater transparency of data, because if you have, it's not enough that data resides in particular parts of the organization. So sales is sitting on one part of the database. They say we are going to open up new towns, right? But if that data is not shared with the demand planning team, it is not discussed with the supply chain team, whatever plan that you do immediately becomes invalid as soon as it's generated. The second one is visual, right? And you and I had also talked about it. A lot of data is now floating around. Are you able to draw trends out of it? Is your senior management, they are not going to open out your Excel sheets and look at everything and then decide and do various types of analysis. They need to see it visually. They need to see it fast. They need to be able to open a screen and say, what happens if I reduce the amount of support that I am giving to this particular geography? How does the demand change, right? So that type of fast, accurate visualization is the third thing for me. And the last bit is traceability, right? In a crisis, you take a call, it goes wrong, it doesn't matter, you go ahead, you move ahead, because the outside situation is changing very rapidly. But in the future, you need to decide, why did you take that particular call? If someone said, I want to take up this product by 20% in this geography, who said that? What were the assumptions behind it? Can we go back and take a look so that when we do a review post the actual event, we can understand what went wrong and we can try and improve on that. And therefore, for me, a disciplined process which is transparent, which provides visualization of data and provides traceability. These are what are going to be very, very important, rather than just willy-nilly saying that I'm going to do demand planning or forecasting much more frequent.
I think that takes us to the debate further. Vijay, what in your view would be a good demand planning to come about in future? You have been doing a lot of planning. You have been growing into different cities, different tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities like everybody. And I think you've seen an unprecedented growth. So what do you think are challenges of demand planning in future? And how do you, mitigate the risk? Because one element of demand planning and forecasting that everybody talks about is that we need to move from deterministic to more resilient planning. Saurabh said the same thing in a more articulate way. Even Ashok brought about that element, and Jagadeesh too. So what do you think should be the element of a good demand planning in future?
Yeah, like I'm talking about the footwear business, where 80%, 70 to 80% business is in the unorganized sector. As far as this Relaxo is concerned, because we deal in high volume, low cost product. So in this COVID period, we had a big challenge about the demand planning, because what the demand we had earlier before the COVID, what the demand we have faced today, it was different. Because as we have already developed our rural area market and the demand already was there. So the thing was, during this COVID, although our business, we are doing good business. Whatever turnover we had earlier, today, what the turnover today we have the same. Even more, we are getting high growth. So there were two things we had faced. One thing is, we have different kind of product. One is this like Hawaii sleeper kind of Bahamas product is the one. Second is this flight brand is there. That these are the low cost product. And second is Sparks. So we have faced a big challenge in our Sparks product, which is little costly product. So suddenly what we saw in our total, we produced more than 8 lakh pair per day. That kind of huge demand is there. So what we were just thinking, we are divided into 10 big factories. Like 2 to 3 factories were only producing Sparks. So suddenly what the demand we have received from the market, huge demand in Hawaii chappal kind. It's low cost product. Demand was there, but we were not fulfilling the demand. One challenge already was there, the workers problem was there, production problem was there. That another, the one important thing is the stock, whatever we had in our godowns. I'm talking about the one brand like we have Bahamas flight, the low cost product. Finished, total no stock is available. And suddenly we were receiving demand, and in our terms, whatever terms we had, we have increased the price, but demand already was continuing. But Sparks, we were stuck because the factories are there, capacity is there, but we were not in position to produce because stock is already there, but we were not producing costly product. So one thing we were facing about the pattern is suddenly changed. That one. Second is I have seen like we are in wholesale, we are in retail, we are in export, we have e-commerce. Suddenly our retail business is dropped, sale is dropped, and wholesale B is okay, it is stable. But suddenly we have started receiving demand from e-commerce, Amazon kind of customer. Suddenly our demand from 100 to 200, 100% demand suddenly increased. So we were facing a challenge. What the planning we were doing earlier and what the planning, we have no data also what will be the next demand from the customer. So that kind of challenge we had faced in our, but now slowly we are streamlining and we are producing. Problem of the workers is now sorted out, but the pattern is suddenly changed that we have faced in this process scenario. But even we don't know what will happen in coming future also, whether demand will continue like today what we are facing is the same we will face or not. But the best benefit we had in this company is what rural market we had developed. That advantage we got, the business we are achieving our target. What the target we were doing earlier, what the annual operating plan target we had, that we had achieved, but not according to the plan. According to the net current scenario, the different. So that we have faced at present, that we are facing in forecasting.
All right, Vijay, let me go to Murli and get his views also on this. Murli, what kind of demand spikes or demand challenges that you faced, and also about your SNOP process, how was it impacted? Jagdish brought about SNOP and dynamics of changing SNOP very well in the first phase of the question. I think.
Sorry for that. Yeah, so I guess I agree with earlier panelists, whatever they spoke about demand planning. The most important thing, according to me, is the flexibility we are able to begin in the execution. Yeah, so if our products are discretionary in nature, okay, you take watches and wearables, so it is not a regular consuming product. So in the time of pandemic, it has become the consumption has become so discretionary. So till the unlock one started, we had practically no consumption, right? So Q1, our recovery rate of compared to the last year quarter was last year same quarter was in single digit. That's a kind of demand offtake in the market. So as the market started opening, the consumption slowly started, and we are also multi-channel, multi-brand environment company. So wherein, for example, until recently the Unlock 4 and Unlock 5 is commenced, malls have not opened. So the large format store business has not started. But certainly, like other panelists said, e-commerce business started slightly earlier. So the challenge for the company first and foremost was when you compare the stock levels with the retailer or the distributors, the first thing is compared to the pre-COVID AMS, the kind of stock I'm holding, it is just doubled or tripled, in terms of absolute quantum. If it talks in terms of number of days stock. So even at the company level, for example, if you're holding, overall at an average of 2 months stock level, because your business is big, now you are looking at multi-folds of stock levels. So the biggest problem for the company is cash flow. So you need to see what kind of products, even if you produce in the interim period. Of course, first of all, you had factories under lockdown for initial, 40-45 days kind of period. After they open, also the biggest challenge was what to convert from the work in progress and what priority to be given for production, and what is the rationalization you should do in the pipeline plan. So like Mr. Ashok Kumar mentioned, we also did, what kind of, best sellers which are likely to go out of stock as the normalcy starts coming, and what kind of new product quantities rationalization you should do in the intervening period to keep your overall inventory under check. And frequent, for example, bringing down or increasing the frequency of SNOP meeting from initially for the first 3 months to alternate weeks rather than doing monthly, to be flexible on your execution and to be closer to the market in terms of what you actually produce and supply to the market.
All right, Murli, that's interesting, and I think that also has the same pattern as we have with all the other people here. As we talk about more resilient SNOP processes, and we talk about what is the role that technology can play, because as I said earlier, we have been talking about building up more digital accelerated demand planning and supply chain processes, and we have found that those companies which are more digital accelerated pre-COVID were one which actually perform better. A lot of studies across this world have shown that. So what do you think should be the role of technology in the current process to streamline almost all the problems that we face traditionally in a supply chain, as Saurabh said, or as Ashok, Murli, Vijay, and even Jagdish talked about the current problem of demand planning during the pandemic? And how should it facilitate the SNOP process? So that's more important to look at our IBP process if you have an IBP process. So I'll start with Jagdish now.
Yeah. See, I think technology will play a big kind of role there. That this connected planning is that what we are talking about. So now in the change scenario, that there are some things that what are going to be imminent. So one is that the flexibility there in manufacturing is one thing that which is going to be a that need of the hour. So like that the lot sizes there earlier, if they were there at a certain kind of size, now I think people should be there in a position there to produce a smaller lot sizes also. So that's what that because there are two patterns which are emerging. There is one is that the items of mass consumption which are there that keep growing, but however niche items there is consumption, but that they're in limited kind of areas, and then they're in specific areas that this consumption of niche items is happening. So these niche products need a different kind of treatment there altogether there across the supply chain. Whether this means there that flexibility there in terms of lot sizes, or that the way your network is designed there, right from earlier that they were traditionally they're getting their multi-echelon kind of supply chain, but nowadays I think that the need of the hour seems to be the shorter the time there, the less number of touches seems to be the way forward there for at least niche products. So that is the second thing what is emerging out. So this is where the technology can play a big kind of role, and the whole S&OP process is going to be dependent there on that how do you maximize your gains there to the organization. So rather than that earlier that people used to look at there that individual functional level or that take at a group level, but I think now in scenarios like this the whole contribution to the organization becomes important. So that includes the inventory as well, inventory there at the customer end, because cash is another constraint there across the supply chain. So now the distributors or the retailer doesn't want to invest there in their money there in inventory that which is not going to sell. So this whole chain there that if it has to be optimized there that so that organizations contributions are maximized, that's where technology plays a big kind of role. Earlier we talked about visibility. So now this is beyond visibility there that like that it has to be connected there that you can scenario planning becomes very important. In scenario in the post COVID scenario, you still there that can have situations like that you never know that which location is going to go down, because as this pandemic is subsiding but it is not yet over, it is going to continue there for some time. So now suppose some of the locations there goes down, then what is your alternate plan there that you plan of alternate network plan, and then thereby that how do your complete scenarios pan out. So that is where I think that technology can play a big kind of role. And nevertheless there to mention demand planning, like these are the things which we have never seen before. These are sudden kind of disruptions. These type of disruptions were not experienced there before of this scale. So these things there need a different kind of treatment. They're all together. So the new models have to emerge. So this is where when now people are talking increasingly there about going direct to the market there for most of the products and cutting the number of legs there across your chain. So if you have to do that, then obviously that the only way you can do that is there with technological help. So
all right, Jagadeesh. I think
those are my views.
Good. I think you have set the debate rolling. Let me ask another question to Ashok Kumar. I have read somewhere in the Economic Times a few days back that there has been a huge change in category consumption to the larger packages, and as people have been moving out of home again, the demand for the smaller packages have gone down. One idea which comes to my mind is that the sales data is showing such a dynamic patterns. How do we understand and how do demand planners work with sales and data analysis to identify and correct this very dynamic demand during this period of time? This is one of the very critical areas which are important to understand the trend, nearby trend, short-run trend, and long-run trend, both for your operational, tactical, and strategic planning. So what are your take on this?
Dr. Singh, I think to be honest, the data is too short a period for us to get concrete understanding of things and start doing structural changes. Okay, but having said that, when we look at the demand and when we see the shift happening, like you said, because what happened is the single the smaller packs in the initial part of the lockdown, at least the smaller packs consumption came down drastically, and it in-home consumption went up. We're seeing a reversal of trend happening as we speak. Okay, but there are some places, some habits keep changing, right? In terms of if an omnichannel the goes up, then you know that the in-home consumption is going up. But we're seeing a near pre-COVID situation happening from a consumer behavior point of view. Having said that, I think what we have taken during the pandemic period, what we have taken is basically watch what's happening. Watch what's happening from a consumption point of view. So we are running almost like a continuous replenishment process. We had to stop it for a short period of time, but we got back on that. What happens as a result of that is you are mirroring the consumption which is happening. Not there's a time lag, but they are mirroring that. So using that data, using that thing, we can understand what is going on in the marketplace to a great extent, and using that you work backwards and plan. Most of them are, I must say, has been more of reactionary planning than very proactive management of things. The only thing what we could do is we could hedge some of the pack materials and all that, where we could see some trends and all that. Okay, so that when you're reacting to a situation, and there's nothing wrong in reacting also in that kind of scenario, because totally uncertainty was there. We're talking about 6 months, right, in the overall period of time. Therefore, so one thing we did very well was we had we continue to have a something called a BCP, business continuity plan meetings, almost every day. The heightened activity of the whole piece, has helped us in terms of understanding what's going on. So what we used to look at probably once a month, what do you look at once in 15 days? We started looking at more frequently. Whether we react to it, whether we act on it, etc., different issue, and that's a filtration process which we do. But fundamental structural changes has not been made. Okay, the only thing I want to just add here is that not just demand planning on the inventory piece. The inventory piece, I think, during this whole period of demand shifts and inventory changes happening, we realize that there are opportunities to look at inventory and work on inventory differently to meet customer demands. So I think what's happened is fast track the whole thing. So it's fast track the whole thinking process. Otherwise, it would have been a normal, routine, mundane, budget related. When you have budget times, you have heavy activity going on in terms of looking at next year plans, etc., etc. It really forced us to do things and look at it differently. So that's what I would say. I don't know whether I answered your question, but that's what we did. And I have to be honest that we have not made any structural, fundamental changes in the demand planning piece.
Yeah, you have to a great extent. Let me go to Saurabh. Saurabh, you have been, seeing the similar changes as Ashok has been saying, even in terms of category consumption, because I'm a consumer of Kellogg. I saw smaller packages coming into the pharmacy very clearly. So I think that the consumption changes are also happening in terms of Kellogg's too. But moving beyond that, what are your views of technology as a way of managing these changes?
Yeah, so one thing I think I really like what Ashok said just now, that fundamentally nothing has changed in the way we really do things today versus, let's say, how we were doing it pre-COVID, right? So during the crisis time, everyone has focused. We simplified, like I said, on our offerings. We could do things that we could respond to manually. Right now, if the same thing has to happen on a national level, and if you remember, one of the earlier panelists in one of our earlier webinars had said that we have BCPs for our factories. We don't have a national level BCP. What happens if your entire nation goes into a lockdown? How are you going to react around it, right? And therefore, that just brings to the fore that the uncertainties are not just driven by the pandemic, they are also driven by continuous changing consumer behavior, right? So how are you going to capture these behaviors? How fast are you going to respond to it? It is no longer going to be possible to do this manually, right? If there's a limitation, even if you put 20-30 people, and very large companies earlier used to have, a very large teams of demand planners and forecasters who would look at category level. Some of them would be looking at subcategory level, and they would each try to do their own piece, right? You can no longer throw manpower at this problem and expect you'll get the same type of results with the same type of speed, right? So for me, technology is important in two aspects. People have already touched about, scenario planning, what if analysis, all of that, right? You need to be able to bring it together during your discussion, and it has to be live, it has to be visual, it should be immediate, right? So that's one piece around technology. The second piece for me for technology is how are you going to connect the different aspects of your organization? So if you're looking at what has sales sold yesterday, what is my inventory level across my depots, across my warehouses, where are my trucks right now, what is exactly getting produced in the plant, what is my RMPM inventory, how are you going to bring it all together if you want to take a decision to change your execution plan? You will never be able to do it unless you can see it all together at one place, right? So to give a very simple example, the sales teams comes back to me and says, SKU ABC is short in let's say Delhi, right? So I need to look at, first of all, what was the forecast at that place. Have they already sold their forecast, which means I need to input into my next month demand plan to say, guys, look at it, how did the forecast go wrong, right? I also need to then see where is this particular stuff lying around within my entire organization. Can I shift it? If I'm going to shift it, what is the additional or lower cost that I'm going to get out of it, right? When is my next production plan? What happened in my previous production plan? Is the stock out due to oversell, or is it due to undersupply? Or possibly this is already, I anticipated it is already in the trucks. Do I need to know when is that truck going to do? Now, these are, let's say there are 10 or 12 data points. There are 4 or 5 people who are going to look at each of these data points. If I have to solve this for one SKU, for one depot, it takes me half an hour to an hour, and it takes me that much manpower. I'll never be able to ever come out of this situation in the future. I need something which will bring these data points. I click one thing, I get 5 visualizations, tell me this is what is happening. Don't worry, it is already taken care of. Obviously, the go-to place would be it never happens, and there is an AI or ML or an automated system which is running in the background. We are far ahead from there. Let's be clear. We are still running ERPs. Our ERPs are still ECC. Sorry, Girikanth, there is no reflection on SAP, but very, very robust old ERPs are still there. Not everyone is able to change to the next S4 HANA, right? It's going to take time to get to that situation. If that's the ERP you're running, maybe you're running 10, 20 different applications which you have tacked onto it, which takes the data from that ERP. But then now you've got 10 applications running on a core bottom, right? How are you going to get these 10 or 20 to talk to each other, right? So for me, the future is going to be even more complex unless you make choices today on what technology and how you are going to implement it to solve the real world problems that you used to do manually in the past. You're going to get more complicated. You're going to get even more caught up in this whole saying technology for technology's sake is not the answer, right? So what I'm trying to come to Dr. Singh is there is obviously a sense of urgency around digitization, and I think all the people sitting here have realized that whatever we could data that we could gather, it helped our decision making become stronger. But there are now today 10,000 people who are offering me 10,000 different solutions. I'm lost in that amount of solutions which are there. So my technology is going to be extremely important. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to respond to the changing world. It's not just about the pandemic, it's about micro level changes. Maybe someone has stopped buying the smaller packs of biscuits because it was out of stock for 2 weeks, and now they've gotten used to buying the bigger packs. That change has happened over 2 weeks or 4 weeks. How are you going to respond to that? How are you going to even get that data? So like I said earlier, getting all these data points together in a coherent manner will be important. Equally important will be presenting the data point to the core decision-making team, because there's no AI sitting somewhere taking the decision for you. It's the same set of people. You need to provide relevant, coherent data fit for the need that you have. I'm sorry, a little long-winded, but
Saurabh, I think you have brought few very critical points on technology, and I can see Girikanth smiling while technology is being discussed. So, Girikanth, what do you think are the dynamic evolution of technology which will deal with such kind of disruption that may become very disturbing for organization to assimilate, and maybe if they have an outdated ERP or they do not know how to forecast, and all of us, in fact Saurabh has been saying that we'll go back to the past. Are we going to the same kind of deterministic forecasting and not resilient forecasting? Then how are we going to manage any kind of crests and troughs in our data which may happen because of some climate change or some political turmoil or some geopolitical issues? We are sitting at the cusp of a great geopolitical turmoil, it looked like, with China. So how is technology going to support businesses in terms of managing their SNOPs and demand planning?
Thanks, Dr. Singh. Actually, it is always a learning, interacting with the business teams. We do say that we have all the technology in the world to solve the problems. Okay, yet we see that some of the struggle for the business is about the very basic things. When I go and meet people, for example, what Saurabh has said, okay, I want this visibility. Then we say, it's there, right? It's there, and our agenda is very clear. We need to show how this data can be brought to the business. And the second thing, I again go back to Saurabh's point. He's putting his demand. Don't present the data with all its Excel sheets and all. Okay, paint the data and bring out those insights for me. Okay, again, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So what I might put a Pareto chart, I might put a bar chart, I might put something. Then he would say, no, this is not giving me any insight. So that's where we need to work with the businesses and then say, get what is that so-called beauty, okay, that they have in their mind. Then we can bring in any kind of visualization. Maybe we will get it wrong the first few times, but eventually we will be there. So that's how I see technology. We are not talking about some rocket technology that has to be invented. It's all there. Okay. But is the technology being consumed by the business the way they want it? I think there is a big gap there, and that's where we need to bridge that particular gap. And again, Jagadeesh also was talking about S&OP, right? S&OP, scenario planning, and all this network. How do I quickly reconfigure my network based on the capacities that are available? Based on the demand changes that are happening. Again, all this technology has been there for the past 20 years. Is that technology being consumed? No, it is not being consumed. People would have put all those optimizers and then they would have started off, and I know that they switched it off, okay, because they found that analyzing the optimizer results is a very complex thing. Okay, again, we need to find a solution there. Okay, see, we take the business as absolute, right? If the technology is not delivering value for them, we need to rework, okay, which pieces to bring in and which pieces to play down. But it's I got the message. Okay, pack sizes. How do we do faster S&OP? Don't visualize the data, okay, and visualize it the way I want it. These are good things. and we need to make the technology work for the business.
Yeah, Giri, I think you have really brought about the dilemmas that technology and businesses, talk about. I always see on LinkedIn, IT second, business first. Then someone says IT first, business second. I think both of them, IT and business together, would be much better things to do, so that we can actually create a better sync with each other. Given this particular debate, and let me take it a little further with Murli, larger part of resilience people have been talking about now as we move further and look at the data for the quarter. In the last quarter, we grew at 23-24%. We are supposed to grow at -10% for the whole year. The world economy seems to be now going for a further tailspin as the second wave coming, so the export and import may fall. Given this, we may have a huge demand challenges in the future, and so also the supply challenges, because I know ITC sources from UK, US, not just from China, and I think see the kind of second wave that's happening. Given the material shortages that happens because of this pandemic, as markets gets completely impacted, how do we really bring about the kind of resiliency into the supply processes? We have seen some element of visibility and granularity that came into the debate with Saurabh and Ashok and Jagadeesh spoke about. But how do we really secure our supply bases? What are the learnings from this pandemic? Because the learnings have been very, very enormous. As Ashok said, we need to look at alternative places, for maybe demand, but also for supplies. And I think looking and diversifying supplies, people have been saying that we need to do nearshoring, we need to do, diversify our shoring, and we need to have a single sourcing, but in a more resilient way. So how does one look at the whole question of resiliency from your perspective in the last 7-8 months and over the years? I'll take this to Murli first.
Yeah, so the way we approached with our suppliers, we also got a few broad vendor base, even many from China, many from Indian base. So the first thing was in the crisis, we all connected with them, and in fact, first 6 months, we provided them, many of the vendors who are dependent on us, the basic support for their survival. So that they don't mindlessly retrench people and come into the situation of when we want them to recover, they should not say I'm looking out now, filling up my manpower. So we gave all that basic support for the vendors to keep on surviving, rather than they should not perish at this important time. So that is the way we supported them, and then it is always at the business level what kind of recovery we are looking at quarter by quarter. And first thing we did this year, we did not no longer consider our business plan for the year as a plan which we will be executing, but however we went quarter by quarter, what could be the number we should go for second quarter and then third quarter. And so that is the way we have been building, we have been rationalizing our the pipeline plans. And pre-COVID also, we used to be on on the weekly demand planning cycle. So the way we do the demand planning, weekly plan, we load it at the factory, looking at SKU level lead time. Lead time could vary from 6 weeks to 15 weeks, depending on the source from where the components are sourced. So we give them every week the demand for at SKU level, looking at what is happening in the previous week. And that way, first thing, we suspended the demand planning for a few weeks in the post-COVID situation. And as things started from unlock 1 and then unlock 2 onwards, somewhere in the middle of unlock 2, we resumed our weekly demand planning and started providing some sort of visibility to the factory planning team for mobilizing the components. And currently, say we are looking at the business is looking at exiting current year in the quarter 4 maybe equal to the last year level. That's the kind of targets we are setting ourselves, and accordingly we are gearing up our supply chain availability so that we are not overstocked or we are not understocked to meet the demand, and we are going conservatively in terms of planning our closing stock approaches. And it's very difficult to forecast at each depot level or the retailer level. So we always do our demand planning at aggregated all India level, and then keep the remainder of the supply chain on full mode. And so you will be able to, as definitely all demand planners will agree, that forecasting at aggregated level is far easier and simpler than doing it at granular level. So using that aggregation of demand as a benefit, then subsequent leg of the supply chain, we keep it on full mode. That is not to push inventories down the pipe, so that we have greater flexibility on hand for distribution. So that's the way we have approached our recovery path.
Yeah, but that has been a very traditional framework which goes into IBP and SNOP. There is an approach called DDMRP, which is very critical of it. Says that then your manufacturing and the delivery lead times are very high, and you could be in deep trouble in terms of fast-moving items and during the disruptions. As far as supplies are concerned, I'll go to Vijay. Vijay, what has been your major disruption in supplies, and how did you manage it? Quickly, because we're running out of time. I think we took more time on the first set, so it could be crisp and faster.
Because of the sudden change in consumer behavior, what forecasting accuracy we had earlier 50 to 60%, that not even more. Now we are expecting only 40 to 50%. So in our scenario, what we are in planning, what we are doing as far as this technology part, we are divided, as we are already dividing our SKUs in ABCD analysis. As similar like FMCG, our 80-20 ratio is there. First 20% SKUs contributing 80% sales, and even within that also we do zone-wise study. Suppose A class SKU of North cannot be A class SKU of South or West. So we just zone-wise do study, and we divide our SKUs because it is a large number of SKUs. So we divide A, B, C, D class. A class SKUs who are contributing like 70% sales, we have our fixed planning, and we weekly SNOP meeting, we decide we can interchange the program also according. That is A class SKU plan separate. B and C class, where we always scared because of the large inventory we are dealing, and there's a chance of inventory can go up like this. So we are going here for the replenishment system. That module we use there. And D class ke liye we receive the demand and we produce the stock as per their customer demand, and we give the fixed lead time also, how much time it will take in supply. So we controlling our inventory, we just do our B and C class SKUs according to replenishment system. Although we also are theory of constraint kind of study, we are also thinking whether it can be useful for us. But at this moment, during this COVID time, big challenge is there for us. So we are just in thinking to do our at least B and C class SKUs contributing 25% sales can be supplied through the replenishment system. And time to time we are doing SNOP meeting, then we can control. We are controlling.
All right, Vijay.
That kind of system.
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me move to Ashok. Ashok, what has been the major challenge in terms of securing supply of RMPM, and in terms of procurement of these materials from different tiers of supply chain across your supply basis?
So two things essentially. One is it started before the pandemic, possibly because of China, and with the pandemic that started impacting us because quarantines had gone up drastically and all that. But there are already few. We have very restricted list of imported goods. So that's a very small list, but there are some essential goods which can impact you across the board. But on the other side, what happened is the main issue was manpower. If you look at it, whether it's our plants or the suppliers' plants, the issue has been manpower and running the operation because of the lockdown one. Extending lockdown two, it got eased out a bit. So I think collaborating with suppliers, working very closely with quality R&D, what do you call it, without diluting standards, but at the same time managing substitutes has been one of the big learnings for us in terms of managing some of the key. Because, for example, if you talk about atta, there are multiple variants of atta and various things are there, right? In terms of supplier collaboration has been one of the key elements which worked, and our previous strengths of managing them actually helped us during this time of crisis. So I would say two things: not really technology there in terms of thing, but working with suppliers, product substitutes, and being nimble-footed there in terms of trying to see what's going on and course correcting on an ongoing basis. During the first phase of the pandemic was the biggest challenge, and I think the teams pulled out very well, I must say. That's what I would say, to be brief.
Jagdeesh, your views, how was supplies diversified in the whole process? The supply basis, rather.
Yeah, for us also it is more or less similar, because the dependence there on China was pretty high. Therefore, particularly some of the products like cans or pumps, these are the things that which used to get imported there from China. So these things that we did see there this well before lockdown there in India, there that we got the lockdown there by the middle of March, but this was there in China there before that. So some of these things, that some of the lessons which this crisis has taught us is that don't confine your don't have a high dependency there on a single source there, because that it is cheap. So you need to have your alternate supply network there in place. That's what is one of the lessons there. Fortunately, we had local suppliers that we could switch on there there during this particular part, and then it's a matter of increasing the share so that we could sustain. The second part, like a learning, is that there in terms of keeping your relationships intact and look for new relationships there in this crisis. There are certain products like sanitizers. The demand has touched the roof there, that these things have grown up there by maybe 200x there, that if my demand was there x, it has gone to 200x, for which I have run out of capacity. So these cases, I think that if you are looking for the traditional type of manufacturers, then probably that we would not have met this demand. That's where that we had looked out there beyond the obvious choices, like that there are companies like there are beverage companies, alcoholic beverage companies, where they are having a lull there in demand there due to this pandemic. So they have converted some of their capacity there to make sanitizers. This is what is that all alliances, relationships is all about, and in crisis times these things there do come in handy there, particularly there when you are tiding over a crisis. Maintaining the existing relationships and nurturing new relationships. This is what has been one of the good lessons there for us. And coming to that dependence there on China, I think that's what is one thing that you take, which all the businesses have to work there on reducing that and create alternate sources of supply and help your suppliers there to cope up there with this. So during that particular time, we were there and continuously there in touch there, because that their time of recovery was much more faster than the Indian suppliers, because the crisis happened there before. So we were there in touch there with them, so that they could once they were able to restart their factories, then we got out of the trouble. So those are some of the lessons.
Thank you. Thanks, Jagdeesh, for those insights. But while we have some learnings from the pandemic, and also as the world sees more disruption in terms of crisis, in terms of geopolitics, natural disasters, intra-country bilateral relations can get, murky. What do we see the role that technology can play? Because, it has been quite observed that huge amount of visibility is required. During pandemic, maybe your requirements of sourcing supply and alternating supply may not be the same as during the non-actual period. When your demand would have been in a different region and the supplies come from a different region, obviously there would be a different proportionate change in this. So how do you really then secure your supply bases, alternate your supply bases, and nearby your supply bases? So I'll take a quick response from Saurabh and then go to Girikanth.
Yeah, very, very.
I'm only asking you a few questions we didn't ask you in the last webinar. So that it's not becoming competitive for you.
Yeah, no, this is very, very difficult question, sir, because I think as a lot of the supply chain people sitting here would attest, the bigger issue was finding alternate suppliers, developing them quickly enough and getting the supplies from them. It was not, if you've lost one person, one guy is, let's say in China and the shipping has stopped and you're not able to get your supply, how fast can you develop an alternate supplier, right? So for me, besides the entire fact around traceability of the material that you have already buying, the key challenge is not technology. It is about finding and onboarding sufficient number of alternate suppliers, and this is very, very difficult especially for unique and specialized items. Right, so especially in, let's say, a food industry or an electronic components industry, or true for any industry where those smaller items are there. So for me, I think we have not yet tapped into, as overall supply chain people, I'm sure their procurement people are very well integrated into finding and keeping a database of alternates that you can execute, even if at a higher price. Right, not sure how much technology related this is. But for me, it is only how fast are you able to roll over your supplies. And I can tell you from personal experience, the biggest issue was getting things moving and finding guys who can do it. So how are you able to use search engines? How are you able to use your personal contacts, networks to find alternates? For me, that's more, that's a critical part.
Yeah, today also one doesn't know how to import things from China and other places, and the shipping lines have been badly hit. There are large number of shipping liners who don't even touch the Indian port because of the congestion that we have, because of the IFS and CFS agents, and they're not clearing the ports. And I think that's a big challenge. The whole transportation is also a clog. But I think you raise a very fundamental question: what role does technology? How much is technology? And I think technology can be answer to almost all your doubts that you raised about sourcing. So I think let me hear from Girikanth in terms of how technology can support this supply resilience and understand this and plan better. Girikanth, you look freezed. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can.
You can hear me, right?
Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I got the question. So some of the technologies. Okay, I will talk about the technology, and I will also talk about the business process. Okay, where we need the business also to adopt the technology in that particular way. There are challenges on that side. When it comes to the technology, one of the things that we talk about is the supplier discovery. Okay, it has been there, right? You have the search engines, you have the business page, the yellow pages, you have all that. Okay, and you put it on the Google, I want this particular thing, you will get a list. But it's not that I'm going to build a business relationship with anyone who appears on the top on the Google search list. Okay, which means I need to do some kind of a homework before I establish my relationship with that particular guy. Which means I want the technology to bring all the information related to what has been his past performance. That's the player story using these tools. Then you flow that particular information into some kind of what we call as the supplier risk assessment. Okay, where the system itself will fetch all that data by crawling the web and bring in that particular information and then present it to you, so that the business teams can go and then do that particular risk analysis. So those are some of the technologies where that could help the businesses. Okay, so that is about the new supplier. Then you have the existing suppliers. In fact, Murli also mentioned, okay, how do I take care of my suppliers? Which means probably I can do some kind of a survey with my existing suppliers. Okay, where I just generally inquire about their what we call as the supplier health assessment. Okay, are you fine? Are the employees turning up? Do you see any particular problem with respect to your suppliers? Okay, by when they fill that particular questionnaire, that will also give you some kind of an indication as to what are the components or what are the ingredients for which you have your suppliers are distressed. Okay, so these are some of the technologies that are available. When it comes to the adoption by the business, adopting this will take time, right? Maybe it will take some 3 months or 4 months. By the time the business priorities would have changed. Okay, now they are onto something else. So that's some technologies are very quick to adopt. Probably it takes only a couple of weeks. Some technologies do take time. You know, by the time if the business moves on, saying that my priority now is different, it becomes difficult. But yeah, we need to work together. Good news is those technologies are available to help the businesses.
Yeah, Girikanth is quite right. You know, I've been seeing, and as a student of supply chain, I've been trying to look at this particular problem from a very different perspective. And you know, all researchers all across the globe says that we do not have enough visibility into our supplies. Even for the single source, we do not know the types of supplies that we have. We don't map those types of suppliers. And even in some examples, if you see some of the good work done at MIT also, they've actually looked at major disruption. They found that even in automotive, if on the 128 supplier, which constitutes only 0.2% of your total supplies, does not have this component, your supply chain can be actually stopped for 2 months. And a business continuity program during this thing. So I think mapping the whole supplier base alternately so that you know where to move along with your supply chain networks, that's your logistics network, plus the visibility that it creates in order for you to take decision, is where technology has actually started doing a lot of good work. Academically, we have you know, seen that there's a lot of researchers that are very case study oriented, and companies like even SAP and others have actually brought in a very big help to the supplier discovery and supplier risk mitigation by actually mapping it. Once you know, you can be a part of your control tower, and I think that's the way digitization is going to define supply chain. One more point that we need to put it to all of you is about production planning, factory. You know, how it has changed over a period of time. You all know that contact tracing, availability of labor, and as I said in the beginning, a large amount of migration back to the villages from the tier 1 and tier 2 cities. And I think still we are into lockdown as far as public transport is concerned to a very great extent. How do we use technology to make production planning more efficient as well as more humane? And also, you know, line balancing, a very efficient exercise. So I'll start this with Saurabh first.
This is very important. Iske pehle, Dr. Singh, I think we have to start going back a little bit into the past and thinking about the SMED and the other principles that we used to talk about. Today, a lot of the discussions around production planning is around scale of manufacturing, right? The larger the run, the more dedicated the line, the more efficient it is, and therefore more savings that I can get. And I still see a lot of plant people who still abide by those rules. So the first thing is that we need to start thinking about, and someone had mentioned it a little earlier, about batch manufacturing. What is the smallest size that I can do, and therefore the flexibility that it's going to build. But again, that's going to be an enabler. The more important piece is how fast are you going to get your actual consumption data into your production plans, and at what rate are you therefore allowing those production plans to impact your production decisions. So if you can get it, and you are saying I am capable of doing a changeover every single day, right, and my data from the market says that every day changeover is what is beneficial to get the correct product into the market. And it's all about throughput, right? The faster I can move the correct product, the less chances it has of staying in the shelf, and the faster it will move out to the consumer. So therefore, how can I connect my market demand? You mentioned the DDMRP piece, right? Like I said, what I get sold gets out of my inventory, gives me a signal to my central warehouse. The central warehouse then raises a demand on my shop floor, and my shop floor produces it, raises a demand on my raw material, packing material supplies, which in turn raises a demand onto my to my suppliers. So this is the traditional chain. How fast can this chain move? Can it be real time? Can it be run every single day? And you can still decide on it that I won't change the plan because it is too expensive to change. But this is how your technology has to link all of the elements together. It's the same traditional way of how we do things, but it has to move with a single source of information. It has to be a demand based, right? And that's what I firmly believe, that that will make supply chains much more efficient. It'll actually make your businesses much more efficient. If we are making what is selling, that's what's going to keep out. Otherwise, you are only going to keep making to stock. So is it a possibility that we can change a make to stock organization to a make to order organization? I think that's the big next leap, particularly for FMCG organization, that I would like to see.
I think I'll go to Ashok Kumar. That's a little controversy. I see make to order and make stock. I know. I think so many of technology players and business players are debating in a different way. So Ashok, what are your takes on that? Let's kickstart the debate there and take it
No,
forward.
I don't want to debate this, but I sort of agree, and I understand where Saurabh is coming from. I think it is not just made to order. It's probably transitioning from made to stock to make to order, somewhere in between, right? In terms of, so I think it has to start from a what do you call it? A total cost of delivery model, because today we work in silos. We still work in silos in terms of what is best for manufacturing, what is best for replenishment, what is best for everything. I think once you break the silos and look at an outside-in perspective of demand fulfillment as your fundamental thing, and cost will always be there, and cost will have to be contained. There's no doubt about that. Nobody is debating that. Then you will have ways of working to make sure that your demand signals flow back, and ready MRP has a way of also hedging inventory at the right places so that can take care of that, right? But I think we are in a phase, I must say, that where when the labor problem hit us, etc., we were in a phase of we actually retracted back to probably old ways of working in terms of larger runs, etc., We are now struggling, or trying to convince the system to get back to normal ways of working, and that's not normal. That's also working with high level of inventory, right? So when you have high level of inventory, you can do all these things. I think the technology coming in with the visibility, and we are in the middle of also an S/4HANA implementation. We will need to probably look at why do we need all this inventory, and when you bring the buffer down, that's when the real thing comes out in terms of the real cost will come out, and we will transition slowly to a much more tidier inventory levels, and forcing that will be the decisions in the back end in terms of how often you change over, how often, because then the other thing is, I think I agree with Saurabh, even if you don't do it, if you know that these are the kind of things which you are not doing, and these are the kind of things which you're letting go, that itself is a big eye opener for the larger organization to take decisions. It's not just a supply chain function, right? We need to collaborate together to make it work for the organization to succeed. So that's what I would say. So I'm not debating with Saurabh. I'm actually endorsing what he's saying. But I understand it's not made to order. Really, it's moving, transitioning towards a made to order kind of a environment or a thinking like that.
No, don't worry,
All
Ashok.
right.
Dr. Singh has this way of putting me in the middle of controversies.
No, but I think you raised a very valid point. Made to order, that's an input. A lot of people think that's a real demand, but I think Ashok made a very subtle point called demand signal. Now, how does demand signal get determined? And I'll go back to Jagadeesh. I won't use the term debate. I said let's discuss. Yeah, Jagadeesh, how are demand signals? You are also from FMCGs, and all of us are in the similar situation. How does demand signal work? Because produce today for day 3, produce today for day 2, produce today for today. And I think that kind of a situation that you have for an CPG or FMCG company, what kind of demand signals are we expecting? Because make to order can actually be very, very variable. It would increase the spike of the variability.
Yeah, I have got only one difference.
I think he has frozen. I think connection is quite bad. I'll go to Vijay and ask him the same thing. How do you guard a signal from the market?
Sir, I just want to tell very bluntly here. Very important thing is here, because the technology and the supply chain is a very tricky job, because we are coordinated with marketing, we are coordinated with the operation, then management is also somewhere involved. All the things are there. So ultimately, what we have to see, considering the current scenario, we have to satisfy our customer. That is very important. It is always there. The thing is only make to profit is also there, because we are the commercial organization. Sometimes what happens, we see the demand, what the demand is there from market, and when we understand that demand is very huge, and there are two kind of products. So we also see the contribution margin, what the margin is there in the products. So sometimes there are two kind of product. We have one machine and two product. One product is giving one margin, and second product is giving second margin, and demand is always there. So we preference we give to the profitable product also, to consider the high profit. And this is the proof. We have already done our job, and within the same turnover we have shown high profits also, considering the satisfaction in market also. So make to profit is also we should keep in mind. And because as you also told me, there is no complete visibility. So there is no complete visibility, so that there's an opportunity also we have to increase the profits also, considering all the priorities whatever we have. So that also I just want to mention here. Make to profit.
All right. Let me go back to Jagadeesh. Seems to have come back. So yeah, Jagadeesh.
Yeah, I have got only just one point of view there apart from what Saurabh has said. See, moving to a make to order kind of a scenario there in a FMCG company there for all products might be a very, very difficult kind of proposition, because it carries there that you take a lot of complexities there along with that. Yeah, it has to be like for some of the products, if you are talking about an e-com channel or a modern trade channel that you take where my demand variability is pretty high, those cases that if I can move on to a make to order scenario there, that obviously that will make sense there for me. A combination of that make to stock plus make to order, because if you see the variability over there, it is 5x or 6x. And at times there that it is 10x also. You can't buffer there everything there with inventory. Then you have to have a combination of make to stock plus there that make to order. Part of the quantity you will supply it there from your inventory, and part of the quantity that you have to do it there on a make to order basis. And coming there onto the regular mass runners and other things, yeah, make to stock model has always worked, and then where we have all mastered there this high batch sizes. But when you treat their different SKUs like the niche SKUs, which is like India, this is one portfolio which is coming up there. So these SKUs, they're obviously, I think if we are, this is where that make to order or that it depends there based mainly there on the lead times. If the customer expectations are there that he has to, if he is ordering a niche product there and then within a short span of time, he wants it. Then for that, whatever is your model, that whether it is make to order doesn't make sense. You have to obviously that to go for a make to stock model. Okay, so it depends there on the different type of scenarios. Now coming there to the demand signal point of view, that in today's scenario also, that if you take our case, we run a continuous replenishment model. So there where we take the signals there from the market, there that the distributor replenishes his stock there on he syncs his stock levels there on a daily basis, and then there that you are getting some kind of demand signal there at a daily basis. Yeah, depending on what is the service frequency on which he is getting service, there is a signal which is coming on, and you translate that there into a production plan there at a week level. Because if you are doing it there on a daily level, probably the variability is too huge, and then for your manufacturing system there to do the setups there, do the changes there on a daily basis will be a very difficult kind of task, and it might not be an economical one. Yeah, it depends there on case to case basis. For some categories it might work there for following a daily signal, and but most of the cases what our experience shows that a weekly cycle is a one which works in a normal scenario. But situations like this, the current pandemic scenario where the demand patterns are completely disturbed, then here more frequent review can help. So that's what.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good insight. I think you brought 2-3 points. One is obviously production and manufacturing flexibility and omni-channel. I think given the time constraint, we have to move towards this. But I'll get Girikanth again. And Girikanth, what are your take on the overall kind of flexibility or agility as far as production planning is concerned, and also managing various channels? We have seen a huge movement from general trade to e-commerce, modern retail has stopped. Maybe all these things also changes over a period of time. So how can technology assist businesses in order to manage this? Can you hear me? Can you unmute? Can you unmute?
Yeah.
No, I said
can you please
what is
repeat?
I said what is the role that technology can play in securing supplies, managing labor, and also the omni-channel? Or you can keep the omni-channel to next set, the last set. You can just answer the first two.
Okay. Role of technology in securing supplies.
Manufacturing.
Yeah. So one of the things that we keep hearing is the kind of exceptional situations that are being faced by the manufacturing plants. For example, only 30% of my labor might turn up. Okay. What if I have some shortage of the key components? So in all these things, as some of our business leaders have mentioned, technology can help with respect to these scenario preparations. So well in advance you can decide, because there are some products which consume raw materials in a particular way, and there are some products which consume capacity in a particular way. Okay, so it is just not the profitability; it is also about the amount of capacity consumption, and this information is already available in the bill of material and the routing. So you can always take the help of a planning tool which will help you analyze what if only my machines are down, or maybe my labor is down, my labor only certain percentage is reporting, or the key materials are only available to this extent. You can run different kinds of scenarios. You can shift the production. You can see how much will you make in-house and how much through the subcontractor, and then be prepared for all these contingencies. So that's another area where technology can definitely play a role. Because
we are
humanly
not
you
able
can't
to-
conceive all this, right?
Right. So let me go back to Ashok. Ashok, we've seen that
Hello.
omni-channel. We have seen that during this period there has been a shift towards omni-channel, largely e-commerce. So, what has been the challenges in e-commerce for players who are in the CPG industries? Traditionally, I think the e-commerce was quite small in amount, and it has surged over a period of time in the last 6-7 months.
So, Dr. Singh, I think while e-commerce continues to be small, but there has been exponential growth in this channel. 300-400% growth happened in the initial phase. Even now, we see a continued growth of 150-200%, and more and more players have come in. So the initial phase, the problem we have been facing was delivery to these guys. So their DCs went down. Okay, so some of these big players DCs went down, because they were also having the same problem we were having in terms of manpower. So how to do DSD to some extent, and how to also manage this sudden assortment also. So there are two things happened, right? One, on the execution side, what happened is the orders and the repeat orders started going big time higher than what we are used to. On the other side, our assortments dried up, and they play on assortments. Okay, so, and as a result, the out of stock at their website went up very, very high. Okay, so the biggest challenge has been, both were challenges. So one, we had to collaborate with them and tell them that this is not going to happen for a period of time. Okay, and working with them very closely to make sure that a different set of assortment has been listed. There are two players primarily, and one of them, we made sure that there is a condensed list. They had only about 5 or 6 or 7 articles, I think about 12 SKUs in their website. Okay, and the other player also, and we started collaborating much more than what we used to do. I remember I was participating in every Friday call with one of the big players in the e-commerce space to look at what happened and how we can collectively, basically collaboration and working together to make it work. In terms of because we also, so they had unloading problem, we had to send people, we had unloading problem, we had people problem, and all of this happened. And over time, what happened is the good news is that the growth continues to be there, not the level which was there in the pre-pandemic, but we have learnings, and we have now got into some kind of end-to-end supply chain model in terms of working with them, even forecasting for that matter. They also provide us forecast now to some level of thing which was not there earlier, and it's good news for us, honestly, because channels growing is good news because it's more direct, right? It's more direct channel which we have, and there we have much more levers to play with in terms of visibility, etc. And therefore it's a welcome move which is happening. But on one side, the initial phase of the pandemic, we were caught off guard completely, and working together made it the pain was reduced to some extent, or a great extent, I would say.
All right, thank you. Murli, what has been your experience? Because being a non-discretionary item, e-commerce became a major source also during the pandemic period. So what are your views on that?
Yeah, so first thing is, I think the pandemic has made all these technologies more acceptable. We were having omni-channel preparedness much earlier, but it was not greatly accepted as a tool as a last mile to the customer. But post-pandemic, since the companies who are prepared in omni-channel suddenly started growing multi-folds in omni-channel, and similarly something called endless aisle. So a retailer need not have all the products in his shelf. if he has got a digital catalog of all the offerings by the company and the locations where it is available, it is always possible to mobilize and fulfill the customer demand. So these were something not much adopted by the retailers and the channel partners earlier, but suddenly these all became big, and this is really an opportunity that became big post COVID pandemic. And so these things, we are leveraging in a big way by fulfillment through omni-channel as well as endless sale opportunity. So what it brings as a huge opportunity to the retailer is also to go lean on his stock and really not lose the customer demand. Find a way of fulfilling it, in innovative way rather than trying to keep everything in his shelf. That is the way we look at this opportunity, and we have been able to leverage largely. And now even the multi-brand outlet channel, traditionally, who will not look at all these technologies today, they are also looking at this as an opportunity, and they are demanding that include us also in this journey. So-called digitization journey. So which is going to really transform the retail landscape.
Gaurav, what is your views on omni-channel selling and the supply chain needed to manage that, and how is it really going to surge the way it has surged, that it may balance with the modern retail as it comes back?
One of the key things that I learned, sir, was what the e-com specialists were saying, that 2025 growths for e-com have all been achieved in 2020 across the world. Right, that's the one big piece, and everyone here also agrees. The amount of growth that we have seen there are very, very large. There are two big things that I see which are going to become very important, and one of them is e-commerce is extremely organized, and they have huge amount of live data which you can use to make your own fulfillment strategy and your own sales strategy. Right. So if you can just log on to, if you've got an account there as a seller, you've got your advertising data which is live. You know your advertising cost of sales. You know which product is at that point selling more, and it is absolutely accurate amount of data. You have all your inventory which you can automate. You can I don't know if it is possible, but if you can splice your inventory with the inventory which is there, there's a huge amount of opportunity, and each of these companies is absolutely data and tech driven. Right. So for me, that's the big advantage that we have as an FMCG. Can we tap on into it? Right. The flip side of this is, are you able to execute to it? Because the execution part from the supply chain is still very traditional. In fact, it is even more complex where an e-com company is concerned. I'm keeping omni-channel aside. Just a traditional fulfillment in e-com, one, they want a different assortment. Right, so they will not sell anything which is 15 rupees, 20 rupees, which your kirana shop is going to keep. Their minimum maybe 200 rupees. The product should be a minimum of, let's say, 200. Make specific SKUs for e-com. Number one. Number two, when you are fulfilling, you need to take an appointment. You need to be there at that time. You need to label the products differently. That's going to be the second big one. The third big one, which is a challenge, is when the returns come back, they don't give you the returns back in the boxes that you've sent. They will put the products willy-nilly in whatever they find, and you are never able to take it back. So for me, any return from an e-commerce channel is actually almost a write-off. I can never take it back into my stock. So huge opportunity in the amount of data and possibilities and technology available. A lot of challenges in how we can try and fulfill that.
Giri, what are your take on omni-channel problems, and how does a solution provider look like it? And how do you execute a solution to it?
Yeah, one good thing is while e-commerce is relatively new phenomena to us in India, these are well-established technologies when it comes to the Western countries. So most of the CPG companies, like you can take a Colgate-Palmolive or you can take a Unilever, they are always connected to a Walmart or whatever, and this has been for a very long time. So the entire process, which they also laid out, that collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment, Okay, you please provide me access to your data, and then let us have a joint plan, and let us build the baseline, and let us also plan our promotions together, and I will execute that. Okay, so that commonly agreed upon plan will move into the execution layer, and in the execution layer you are able to fulfill based on the commonly agreed upon joint plan. So these technologies are available. It is just that we need to work together, bring the retailers and the CPG companies to adopt these CPFR processes, and also take care of the aspects that Saurabh has mentioned. Okay, how do you take care of the returns? And we were also talking about that MTO versus MTS, right? It might not be MTO. If I get the plan in advance, probably I would have produced according to that particular forecast, and I will keep replenishing based on the jointly agreed upon plan. So these processes are available, and good that the industry is also looking at that, and the technology can readily be brought in and made to work.
All right, thank you. I think we have overstepped our time by number of minutes, So I think we'll just take 1 minute from each one of you to summarize as to what is that would make supply chain of the tomorrow's better. So we can start.
Two things, sir. One एक चीज बोलना बहुत difficult है, but resilience and data driven. Those are the things that really come to mind for me.
Yeah, Vijay, you can also.
In our case, considering customer demand, we have to watch what the current scenario, what the customer demand is there, and according to customer need, we have to plan our production. That's
Murli? Yeah, thank you. Murli?
Yeah, digitization and demand signals in the entire value chain and make it more flexible from the hardware point of view, meaning from the supply side, supply ecosystem become more flexible and responsible to be more responsive to the market demand.
Jagadeesh?
Yeah, I would see that supply chain to be more responsive and value driven. There in the sense, one of the piece that what we have not touched during our discussion is the execution piece. Whatever planning we do, unless and until our execution there, that the warehouse doesn't execute it, then probably that whatever we are talking about will fall apart. So that is the one thing, that one piece which is very, very critical. That's where where there is a lot of modernization is required, and if you have to deliver value, that is also one of the piece that could take what companies need to have a strong kind of execution systems. Okay, so now if you have to generate, the supply chain has to be responsive and cost effective, then execution has to be strong and it has to be technology driven. That's what is my take.
Ashok, Kumar?
Yeah, just closing. I think one of the aspects which we didn't talk about, but I think it's increasingly important, is risk management and supply chain is important, and we have learned it the hard way in terms of during this pandemic. Apart from that, demand-driven supply chains with digitally, front end, at least the front end part of the supply chain. I'm not talking about the internal visibility of SAP and all that, or ERP for that matter. It's most. I mean, we're talking about TMS products and stuff like that, giving us complete end-to-end visibility, or in the front-end supply chain, which will help us in terms of integrating demand with us, EDIs, etc. I think technology on the front end, we preparing ourselves in the back end for all kind of eventualities, will help us, tide over crisis and be more responsive and nimble-footed. That's what I would say.
Girikanth?
Yeah, I think everybody has already mentioned. Okay, I just need to put those pieces together. Yes, I agree. Managing the demand signals and managing the risk, making it more agile, making it responsive, resilient, and technology has a big role to play in each one of that. And I agree with that comment that Ashok has made, that it's just not the internal visibility, right? How do we connect all these players, the modern retail, with the CPG companies, with the suppliers, and bring in this entire and also your transporters. So Jagadeesh has been talking about re-emphasizing on the execution side of the things. Okay, so it's important to connect all the partners, including the transporters as well. And like when I look at it, the good thing is all these how to do this how is already available, maybe in the Western world, and today even China is ahead of us. The amount of digitization that has happened, the kind of interoperability between the organizations, it's far better in China. So we can draw upon that. How is an Alibaba doing it? How have they connected different players, and bring in those lessons to India, so that so to speak, like we are in the catch-up mode. Okay, we are definitely not in the front runners, but at least that risk that we always perceive, who has done this kind of a thing in the world? This is the kind of thing that we always face, right? Okay, are you experimenting on me, or has anyone done something like this before? So we are not experimenting. All these stories are available. Okay, China is there, the Western world is there. Now it is time for us to adopt and then transform, reimagine this entire supply chain. That's how I see it.
Very good. I think that's where we will move towards. The world is interconnected, so will the company within its own ecosystem. There are enough digital technologies to make an end-to-end visibility possible, and I think one of the things that I see is that large number of them have brought in control towers and huge visibility. I see even in India, and they are moving towards integrating each and every element of it, and I think that's where it is. So the risk would give way to visibility, and visibility will provide you with a very informed risk assessment. Maybe the connected planning is a good model on which all your technology may have to sit, along with some kind of understanding of demand signals, which largely could be more probabilistic with a range rather than a single forecasting method, which could get subsumed into signals. One thing that I want to comment is that when you look at only sales order, there is a huge sales variability. You need to build it into demand signals by using your sales forecast, your sales order as an input, and also all your micro input like promotions and other, which really create a variability in your demand, and get a good signal from you to work. I think that plan variability is much lower, and demand plan variability is much lower than sales variability. And I think there is a machine learning language which can give you patterns of all these changes that can happen even during the pandemic. So I think there is a technology for a larger integration of supply chain that can bring more granularity, because one of the things that you saw was that you are looking at more granular forecast to meet the market right now when the market was changing, and I think that could be things. So end-to-end visibility is what is important, and maybe we move towards that. So I thank Ashok, Jagadeesh, Girikanth, Murli, Vijay, and Saurabh for such a lovely interaction. And sorry, we have just gone ahead. I just forgot the time and we've gone ahead. So I think hopefully we all enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much.